Hello. Got a few minutes that I didn't think I'd have today, so I decided to do another unscripted thing where I talk about stuff because I feel like it. Today I'm going to talk about Cliff Burton, Metallica's first bass player and one of my big heroes. And he wasn't the reason I started playing the bass guitar, but he is the reason that I think I stuck with it, because I had a few bass lines that I had heard and was really inspired by, and actually the movie Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, which I might talk about at some point, was a big inspiration. There's a bass battle in there that's pretty epic, as they say, and but Cliff Burton was a really early inspiration and a great musician, and his bass solo, Anesthesia, was in a book of guitar tabs that my brother had, and I decided that I wanted to learn to play the whole thing. And I never got all the effects right, but I did eventually learn to play all the notes, or at least I knew the order that they came in. I don't know how well you'd say my execution was, but that was how I fell in love with the bass, was playing that song and learning those notes and listening to that recording of just an amazing bass player and a really creative person in a genre that isn't always known for creative bass lines, or even audible bass lines, and even he wasn't that audible all the time, but he did something really cool with the bass, and I loved that. And you know, you'd hear it, or people would hear it and think it was a guitar, and then they'd see it was a bass player doing that, and I always thought that was pretty cool. You're not usually going to see a bass player that has that much facility and that kind of a tone, and so it was cool that he did that, and I always thought it was really impressive. And there's just things that he would do, not always even that technical, but just interesting, like Jump in the Fire by Metallica. He could have just played what the guitar part was playing, but instead he changed the root over the same riff, and so he changed the qualities of the chords. And I, for one, haven't seen a lot of that with straight ahead metal. It's not something you see very often, at least in what I've heard. And so I always thought that was really cool. And if you listen to the bass track of Seek and Destroy, there's some really cool stuff that goes on there. It's like harder than the guitar part is. And he just did a lot of cool things, and he was a cool dude, and he played some great music and with some great musicians, and he was, you know, one of the reasons I fell in love with the bass, so I'm always thankful for him, for that. And I just think he's a great player, and I think that those early albums, if you listen really closely and you get the right sound system to actually be able to hear the bass, it's really quite remarkable what he was able to do. And though he might not have been the most virtuosic player or even the most clean technically, he could actually do quite a few really impressive things, and I just think that's great. So anyway, Cliff Burton, cool guy.